r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. What is the most disturbing deathbed confession you've ever heard? My mother started confessing to killing her friend when she was a teenager. She had been senile for about a year and usually didn't talk much, but she was speaking directly and clearly. Her story was very detailed, and we were just sitting there horrified. A few hours later she was back in a more sedated state, and someone figured out it was the plot of a book by an author she loved. I don't know how much she was aware of anything at that point. She died early the next morning, but she would have absolutely laughed her ass off if she knew what she did to us. A nurse once shared that an old man confessed to sabotaging his brother's parachute during World War II because they were in love with the same woman. His brother died, and the woman married someone else anyway. He said he lived with the guilt every single day. Not really anything compared to murders and shit. And not really a confession. But the day my great-grandfather died, he asked me to retrieve a suitcase from under his bed and throw it away. It was full of porn and sex toys. He was 98, so good for him, but also I wish I had just thrown it away. Wasn't deathbed, but my grandma told us that her dad and uncles murdered the man who raped her and disposed of the body. She waited until after they all passed away to tell people. I've heard a similar story from an elderly relative, but the guy was innocent. She just didn't like him because he was gay. She accused him of rape, and her father and uncle took him into the woods and shot him. The worst part is that she said she never felt guilty over it. She only felt guilty because her uncle couldn't deal with the trauma and he killed himself a few years later. I watched a video, and this super old granny in Alaska talked about how she killed her abusive husband in Tennessee or wherever. So she thought about it for months, was abused during and before that, then she asked him to fix something up high in the barn, hid some rakes under hay, and straight up pushed the ladder, and made him fall on the rakes, killing him. So she calls the police, I think it was like 1940s 50s times, and they investigate it, and find he fell on accident. She moves to Alaska and lives a long, fulfilling and happy life. Not quite a confession, but near the end of my mom's life, she asked, "Where are my boys?" My twin and I thought she meant girls, so we told her we were there. After she died, the day before the funeral, we got a call from a private investigator asking if they could speak to my mom. I told them she had just passed away, and the private investigator shared that they represented a client looking for their biological mother. I was seriously thinking it was someone that somehow heard my mom had passed and was trying to get money. At the time I was grieving, so it seemed that plausible. I decided to hear her out, and she was absolutely describing my mother and parts of her life that no scammer would have known. Come to find out, our mother had 2 boys from 2 different men prior to marrying our father. One of the men was from her hometown, the other was from Japan. So much of her life before our dad was an enigma suddenly. Both her sisters had Alzheimer's, so no information was ever shared with us. I don't think I'd call this a confession, but it was just before he died. I volunteered at a hospice, and there was a guy who had pretty severe dementia. Before he passed, he started reliving a moment from when he was drafted for Vietnam. He mistook me and another volunteer for his war buddies, and apparently they had murdered a man and his family when they got back. From what he was saying, it wasn't supposed to be the whole family, but things spiraled, and they wound up killing the man, his wife, and her parents. He was unnervingly calm, not panicked, just calculated. He didn't acknowledge anything we were telling him either. He was stuck in that memory. He was in the middle of going over how to hide the bodies when he slipped back into his normal self, and then refused to talk anymore about anything to anyone. He passed away shortly before dinner time the same day. My great-grandpa came home from World War I, and his family had a great big party. He noticed his 13-year-old sister was missing, so he went and looked for her. He found their neighbor raping her. He yanked the man off of her and told her to go to their mom. We don't know if he beat him or killed him immediately, but on her deathbed, my grandma said she hid his bloody clothing buried in the front yard from that night, and the body is long gone. Where the clothing is supposedly buried, there is a beautiful patch of irises that grows. Not a confession, but a pretty funny story of my grandfather. So I was the closest person to him in the family. I was flying home to try and see him and missed him passing by an hour. When I arrived, everyone started asking me questions. Seems he sat up in bed, turns to others, and said, "Let me tell you a story. I'm not his name. I'm an assassin, and my name is Jonas McGillfree. I've hidden $2 million in gold bullets." He then laid down and passed away. The entire family figured I had to know about it because of how close we were. I used to skip school and go to his house all the time when he got a new silent film in on VHS. I had no idea what he was talking about. Family spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. I stumbled across the answer a few years later. He was a big Louis Lama fan. I wasn't, but on a whim I picked up a book and started reading. Right there, the book started out, "I'm not X. My name is Jonas McGillfree, and I've hidden 2 million in gold bullets." I know it's not exactly how worded in the book, but close enough. It's been almost 30 years now. I gave the book to my mom and she shared it with the family. It's so like my grandfather to pull something like this, honestly. He was an absolute character in life. Miss him greatly, and man, I still laugh at this. My grandfather looked at me when I was 16 and apologized for the sexual assault he committed against my mother when she was a child. Still fucks with me to this day that he did that and thought I'd be the person to forgive him. Not really a deathbed confession, but I was working in a hospital geriatric ward and I walked into the room of an older ill woman who immediately confided in me that she didn't have a vagina but was married for 35 years and kept her husband very happy. That always stuck with me. I really didn't know how to respond. Maybe her intent was to get me to remember her. Not really a confession, but supposedly, my great-grandmother's second husband was a piece of shit. Like, kid-diddling money-grubbing type piece of shit. And my dad and my aunt always told me when that man passed, he didn't go peacefully. He kept seeing things on the ceiling, crawling on his legs, and was screaming, "Get them off me, get them off me, don't let them take me." That story always creeped me out as a kid. Context: my mom was the last person I really had in my close family. Sort of a deathbed confession. My mom, after she died, left me her will and a letter. In that letter, she told me I was adopted. After I'd asked repeatedly over the years if I were adopted. Functionally everybody that knew my parents knew. That messed me up pretty good, not gonna lie. So if you, my dear editors, have adopted a child, please tell them before you die and don't lie to them. Because that was an immensely shitty way to find out. Not exactly a deathbed, but near it. When I first started dating my wife, her grandmother made a speech about making sure I would treat her granddaughter right and not abuse her. She said she slipped extra Tylenol into her abusive husband's coffee and he died of massive heart attack. I thought she was just making up something to make me scared. At her funeral I brought that joke up and my wife said her grandpa died of massive heart attack. I think she actually did it. Had her 80-year-old something patient tell me when his wife was dying, she admitted to having multiple affairs throughout their long-ass 60-year marriage. She went as far to say she never loved him and his only son wasn't his. I was transporting him to emergency department. He likely only had months left to live, wanted to share with me. Still think about this often. My grandma is almost 90. She had several brothers and sisters. All of them have blonde hair and blue eyes. She has brown hair and brown eyes, and a slightly darker skin tone. On my great-grandma's deathbed, she said, "I need to tell you something." When I was younger, I had an affair with a Cherokee man. My grandma had already pieced this together long ago. She always told me that she was half Cherokee. Anyways, a couple years ago my dad did this genealogy kit from ancestors.com. 0% Native American. I was told not to tell grandma. When I was 10 or 11, my grandfather passed away from cirrhosis of the liver. He was a happy functioning alcoholic. I was in his hospital room alone with him the day he passed, scared because of how different he looked from the man I'd always known. He'd lost like half his body weight and looked skeletal. He held my hand and told me that his father, my great-grandfather, killed 4 men in their beds with an ice pick because they raped a colored girl and the law wouldn't do anything about it. He went into gory detail that bordered on torture porn. I still have mental scars 35 years later. I didn't understand all of that at the time, and it wasn't until years later telling my mom about it that she confirmed and explained it in a more gentle detail. Apparently, my great-grandfather and his brother may have also been professional, or maybe serial killers, and supposedly killed upwards of 25 KKK members across Alabama, Georgia, and northern Florida. That old white lady admitting she'd lied as a teen about a black boy assaulting her. The boy was killed, and he was innocent. My gran was on her deathbed and was convinced she was going to hell because she stole money from the church rectory 50 years earlier to help feed her 10 young children. I think gran saying that was more upsetting to my aunts than her actual death. Not because of the stealing, because we all agree that a decent God wouldn't care when someone stole to feed children, but just how adamant gran was that she was going to hell because of it. Made for some drama before she passed for sure. Rest in peace, grandma. My grandma told my sister and I that our uncle, her oldest, was not actually our grandpa's son. She was raped by her brother-in-law's brother and met my grandfather soon after. He didn't care that my uncle wasn't his, he raised him just like he was his own. She asked us to never tell anyone. We never have. My maternal grandfather apparently confessed that he saw the ghost of his daughter, who had died a few years prior, the day before he had a major heart attack that took his life. It came to light that he had sexually abused her as a child, and my grandmother basically knew and did nothing to protect her kids. The revelation imploded my family, but not until nearly 20 years after he died. Crazy shit. We thought my granny was dying. The hospital has asked us all, my mum and my brother and sister, to come and say goodbye. We are going in one by one with my mum, and one of the things that my granny keeps bringing up is that she's sad for me, as I'm single, and won't be having any sex. Good to know where her priorities were when she was about to die. My grandmother confessed to me that her oldest brother was the product of incest. My great-grandmother had him when she was 14. To be clear, her dad, my great-great-grandfather, raped her. I was 17 when she told me this, and I said I wouldn't have been able to raise that baby. She said she had no choice. And damn if that didn't scare the ever-living shit out of me in 1997. Not quite deathbed, recovering from hospice, but then back to hospice. My grandfather was in the hospital and was talking to my grandma and me. He was pretty out of it and had this conversation with my grandma. When I get out of here, we are getting a hotel. Why, honey? So we can have hot wild sex. Man was 86 and I was like, "'Kay, I'm gonna go get a soda." Not a confession, but as my grandmother was about to die, she rattled off a list of names of people who she owed a debt of favor or gratitude, and a list of people who have wronged her. She made sure my father knew and remembered. My grandmother was tough as a nail and survived enough horrors for multiple lifetimes: Japanese occupation during World War II, Chinese Civil War, Cultural Revolution, etc. I like to think it was her way of making sure that even death cannot save people who've wronged her from her wrath. And if you're a Trekkie, yes, this is very Kardashian. Rumor is, a priest at our local hospital confesses his sins to the dying, whispering in their ears before they pass away. Horrible things he did to little indigenous children in the 60s 70s. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.